Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we start with the second chapter of first canto. All of you have read, correct? So what we can do is, I can tell you the breakup now, okay, and then as we go through the verses, we'll also refer back to the flow so that it's easier for you to understand how the verses flow in this chapter. Okay. So in the last chapter, the first chapter is the questions by the sages. So there 6 questions were asked, okay, and the second and third chapter basically gives the answers to those 6 questions. Some of those questions, like Leela Avtaras and Purusha Avtaras, they are spread across Bhagavatam. So Purusha Avtaras you will find in second canto and third canto as well. And the Leela Avtaras are there throughout Bhagavatam. But our acharyas have explained that the first 2 chapters, the first 3 chapters basically have the 6 questions, and the answers are also given in the second and third chapter itself. So the section of Bhagavatam ends there itself. After that, from 4th chapter onwards, the Shaunakadi rishis will ask more questions. Okay, and the answers would follow in the rest of the canto. Okay, it's like that. So, after the Shaunakadi rishis, or Shaunaka rishi has asked the questions, then Suta Goswami starts to speak. Okay, and the first 3 verses, the first verse is where it's mentioned that Suta Goswami starts to speak, and the second and third verse is basically a prayer or glorification of Shukdev Goswami, his spiritual master. Okay. So after that is done, and 4th and 5th verse is where Suta Goswami offers prayers to the Supreme Lord, his devotees, and in the 5th verse he expresses satisfaction at the questions which Shaunaka Rishi had asked, okay, on behalf of the whole assembly. So from the 6th verse onwards till 22, actually from 6 to 22, it's all about devotional service. Okay, so here I have given a very refined breakup of the verses. So from 6 to 15, now Suta Goswami explains that how devotional service or goal of all activities is to have attraction for the Supreme Lord and perform devotional service. Okay, so that is explained. And from 16 to 22, basically 16 to 21, 16 to 22 is the process of devotional advancement, means the bhakti process, the process of bhakti, the abhidheya process. It's explained from 16 to 22, and basically from 16 to 21 there are different stages in devotional service. So we will see, we have this verse which Rupa Goswami said, Ado Shraddha Tatha Sadhu Sangha. So each of these verses correspond to one of these stages in devotional service. Okay, and then the 22nd will be a generic verse where Suta Goswami expresses that this process of devotional service is performed with delight and it's enlivening to the self. Okay. Now, after this is done, then if you see the context, this assembly of Shaunakadi rishis and Suta Goswami, they have been reciting Puranas. So in all the other Puranas also you see that Suta Goswami is the one who's reciting the Puranas, and the assembly is made up of Shaunaka and other rishis. Okay, so many other Puranas have also been recited. So Suta Goswami here makes a distinction. Okay, now we are reciting the topmost Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam. So what about those Puranas who glorify Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva? So he gives a comparative, or a demarcation, or a level of how the worship of the other deities, the top demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, compares when it comes to Lord Vishnu. Okay, and then after that he also gives a distinction of the worship of demigods. So that happens from 23rd to 29th verse. So 23 to 25 you have how Suta Goswami will explain how Vishnu worship is better than Lord Brahma's and Lord Shiva's worship. And then from 26 to 29, all other worship of the demigods are also rejected. So from the context of this broad view of 18 Puranas and what Suta Goswami has already spoken about so many other things, if we see, now he's bringing out the message clearly that okay, those things are there, but the devotional service to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is the topmost. Okay, so that is brought out here. And then from 30 to 34, 2 questions are answered. So Jiva Goswami, in one of his Sandarbhas, he explains that the second chapter answers 4 questions out of the 6 questions, and rest 2 questions are answered in the third chapter. Okay, so we will see which all questions are answered in the second chapter. So from 30 to 33, the 5th question is being answered, which is the Purushavataras. And 34th answers the 3rd question. So if you remember, the first question, 1.1.9, it basically asked what is the highest welfare or most beneficial for people in general. Okay, that was the first question. Second question was, anybody know this? Essence of all scriptures. Okay, essence of all scriptures, and that which satisfies the self. Yenatma suprasidati. Okay, so that was the second question. Third question was, what was the reason why the Supreme Personality of God Krishna appeared in the womb of Devaki? Okay, so that was one. And actually 13th verse also, it's some acharyas they include 13th verse also in the 12th verse, but then for simplicity's sake they are seeing only the 12th verse. So basically Krishna and why he appeared in the womb of Devaki. So what's the purpose? 17th question was on the Leela Avataras. Okay. And I think Prabhu has already discussed the details of why it is Leela Avatara and other details also. Okay. So 17th is Leela Avataras, 18th is the question about Purusha Avataras, and 23rd is where did Dharma take shelter after Krishna left this world. Okay. So the answers are there. Actually, the 6th and 7th verse of this chapter, okay, they answer 2 questions. We will see how. We will see how they answer the first 2 questions. Okay, and this 5th verse also. It's actually indirectly. Indirectly, we can say that it answers the second question also. We will see how that happens. The 12th question is answered at the end of this chapter, the last verse, 34th verse, and the 18th verse, which is the 5th question, the Purushavataras, it's answered in the second chapter, 30 to 33, and the Purushavataras are also discussed in the third chapter, first 4 verses. Okay, so what is the link and why we are discussing Purushavataras again in the third chapter? We will see when we come to that stage. Okay, so these 4 questions, 1, 2, 3, and 5th, they are answered in the second chapter, and the 4th and 6th are answered in the third chapter. Okay. So this is clear, right? You are clear with this. Do you have any questions at this point? No. Okay. Fine. So how I intend to do this is, we'll go through the verses, and as I mentioned, we'll also see the flow. Okay. And if you are not clear on the flow at any point of time, you can raise your hands. We can discuss that then and there itself. But anyway, we'll have, and if you have any questions from the purport or some other question which is not specifically related to the flow, then we can have a question answer session at the end. So Vyasa Uvacha, this is the first time Srila Vyasadeva is speaking in Srimad Bhagavatam. Iti samprashna samhrishto vipranam raumaharshinihi pratipujya vachastesham pravaktum upachakrame. So Vyasadeva, Sri Vyasadeva said, Ugra Shrava Suta Goswami, the son of Romaharshana, being fully satisfied by the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempted to reply. So the questions have been asked in the first chapter, and now Suta Goswami is going to reply. And here, if you see, it's mentioned that iti samprashna samprishto. So Suta Goswami is basically happy with, it's perfectly satisfied with the questions itself. Okay, so this connection we will see in the 5th verse. Okay, that even the questions, anyway, we'll come to the 5th verse and we'll discuss. So Srila Prabhupada, very simple question, very simple purport. The sages of Naimisharanya asked Suta Goswami 6 questions, and so he's answering them one by one. So in this connection, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that this chapter deals with these 3 things: the process, Abhideya, the goal, the Prayojana, and the object of worship, the Supreme Lord, Bhagavan Krishna. So we might not be able to get into these details, but just as mentioned here, so that Abhideya we will see, because that will be from the verse 16 to 21. Okay, and the Prayojana also will be mentioned in the 21st verse, and then the object of worship as Bhagavan Krishna will be discussed in the 28th and 29th verse. Okay. So yeah, so this we all Jiva Goswami in Krama Sandarbha, he mentions that the 4 questions are answered in the 2nd chapter and 2 questions are answered in the 3rd chapter. And yeah. So now Suta Goswami, after hearing these questions, the first thing that he does is offer his respects to his spiritual master, Shukdev Goswami. Suta Uvacha Yam pravrajantumupetamupetakrtyam Dvaipayano virahakatara ajuhava Putreti tanmayataya taravobhinedus Tam sarvabhuta hridayam munimanatosmi. Srila Suta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage Shukdev Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher castes, his father Vyasdev, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son!' Indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed in response to the bereaved father." Now, it might seem, or at least when I first read that, I found it difficult to understand. Okay, why Suta Goswami, whose intention was to glorify Shukdev Goswami, is speaking a verse like this. But no, there are hidden gems within this verse itself, which brings out the qualities of Shukdev Goswami and how exalted he is. Okay, so one was that he is Sarvabhuta Hridayam. He can enter into the hearts of everybody. He was such an accomplished sage that not grossly enter into the heart, but by his presence, he manifests within the heart of the people. And he was liberated from his birth. So therefore, he did not have to undergo any reformation or any samskaras or any sacred ceremonies like this, because he was liberated from the birth itself. And even when his father, who asked Putreti, he was crying for his son, still he was so detached that he did not even look back. And the response that Vyasadeva got was only from the trees, not from the sun. So these are the glories of Shukdev Goswami, who was so renounced, and he was liberated right from his birth. So the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he gives an introduction to this Varna and Ashrama principle. So in this chapter, we will see that, if you know, actually Prabhupada wrote, or there's a book which is compiled from the lectures of Srila Prabhupada called as Dharma. Right? So that Dharma book is basically his lectures on the 2nd chapter of this canto. So the aspect of Dharma comes out very prominently in this chapter. So even if you see the verses from 6th onwards to 15th onwards, there's a discussion about Varnashrama, about prescribed duties, what's the purpose of the Dharma and other things. So Srila Prabhupada gives an introduction to this verse with the explanation of Varna and Ashrama, of what Varna and Ashrama is, and how it is meant to basically bring a person from mundane consciousness to spiritual consciousness. We'll see it over the period of these verses. Srila Prabhupada explains that to attain the position of a Vaishnava from ordinary birth is a process. So he says a man becomes twice born, or a Dvija. Ja basically means one who is born, one who comes into being. So Dvija means one who is twice born. First he is born from the womb of his mother. Second, he is born from the spiritual master who initiates him. So he is called as twice born. And after qualifying as a twice born Dvija, one may study the Vedas. And after becoming well versed in the Vedic studies, one becomes a Vipra. A Vipra or qualified Brahmana thus realizes the absolute and makes further progress in spiritual life until he reaches the Vaishnava stage. The Vaishnava stage is the postgraduate status of a Brahmana. Right? So Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse, Janmana Jayate Shudra Samskarat Bhave Dvija and Brahma Janati iti Brahmana. So one attains the position of a Brahmana when he knows Brahman. But Vaishnava stage is the postgraduate status of a Brahmana. So in this case, Shukdev Goswami was a Vaishnava right from his birth. Oh no, sorry, not right from the birth. He was a Brahmana right from the birth. Okay, so he'll get into this Vaishnava stage. We will see that it will come. So Vaishnavas don't have to follow Varnashrama regulations as a purificatory process. So Varnashrama regulations are basically meant for purification. Varnashrama is a material setup. It's not a spiritual setup. It's a material setup which is made basically to elevate a person from his material, from three modes of material nature, and take him beyond the three modes. Okay, so Varnashrama is not spiritual. It's actually material setup for the society, basically for the upliftment of the society. Okay, so therefore, when someone has to be brought from the three modes of material nature to the transcendental level, right, from Tamoguna, Rajoguna, Satoguna to Shuddha Sattva, then it requires purification. So Varnashrama system is basically a method of purification for uplifting the people from the lowest modes to the highest mode. Okay, how that happens, we will see in future. So in this case, Vaishnavas don't have to follow the Varnashrama regulations as a purificatory procedure. Okay, as a purificatory procedure, they don't follow. But from the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, we know that this is required for preaching purposes. Not that those, or one who takes up devotional service, he would require purificatory procedure. But one who has attained the highest level of pure devotional service, for them, Varnashrama is not a mandatory regulation. For them, it's just like that. In Bhagavad Gita, Janaka, he followed the principles of the duties just to set an example for others. So Vaishnavas do that for that purpose. And Prabhupada writes, Shukdev Goswami was a Vaishnava from the beginning. Therefore, there was no need for him to undergo all the processes of Varnashrama institution. Okay, ultimately the aim is to turn a crude man into pure devotee. And anyone who becomes a Vaishnava, who is accepted by the first class Vaishnava or Uttamadhikari, is already considered a Brahmana regardless of his birth due to his past deeds. So this is important because to establish or to understand whether one has attained the level of a Vaishnava or not, it requires the, you can say, stamping or the authority of a first class Vaishnava or Uttamadhikari. Okay, only he, when he tells or when he accepts the other person as a genuine Vaishnava, then we know that he has attained the highest level. Okay, so this is what Prabhupada writes here. And another example is from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, which is the Prabhupada's purport. He says that Haridas Thakur, Srila Haridas Thakur, was the Acharya of the holy name, and he was accepted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Namacharya. Right? The Supreme Lord himself accepted Haridas Thakur as Namacharya, so therefore he is an Uttama Vaishnava, although he appeared in the Mohammedan family. So this is the process. So in conclusion, Srila Prabhupada writes that all these low-born people, Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Puluksha, and these lists will come in the second canto, can be delivered to the highest transcendental position by the mercy of the Vaishnavas. And Shukdev Goswami was the instructing spiritual master, and therefore he offers his obeisances to him. Okay, now some things here is, till this point, Shaunaka Rishi had not asked Suta Goswami to speak about Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, he has not asked him. And we know that Shukdev Goswami spoke Srimad Bhagavatam. But here we see that as the questions were asked, then Suta Goswami first was very happy, okay, because now he's getting an opportunity to speak about the Supreme Lord. And he also got an opportunity to basically speak about Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so that is giving satisfaction to him. So even though Shaunaka Rishi did not specifically ask him to speak about Srimad Bhagavatam, still, the questions that were asked can be rightly answered only by Srimad Bhagavatam. It cannot be answered by any other Puranas. In some of the other Puranas, Shaunaka Rishi, when he asks questions, then he'll ask, okay, can you speak about the glories of Lord Shiva? Or can you speak about the glories of Lord? Like that, there are these specific questions that he asks. But here, the questions are, what is, the first question is, which is highest welfare activity for everybody. Second question is, which gives the topmost satisfaction to the heart, Yenatma Suprasidati. So this is an impetus for Suta Goswami to speak about Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada in his lecture, just given these quotes here. So here he says that Offering respect to the spiritual master means to remember some of his activities. Some of his activities, just like you offer respect to your spiritual master. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini. This is the activity of your spiritual master, that he is preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he is a disciple of Saraswati Thakur. Namaste Saraswati. So these are the activities. So offering respect to the spiritual master means we glorify his activities. We glorify his qualities. Okay. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he makes another comment and he says that implied here is the rule that at the time of lecturing, other speakers of Bhagavatam should also meditate in this way, so that Suta prayed that Shuka may enter his heart and speak from there. Sarva Bhuta Hridayam, because Shukdev Goswami is the one who spoke Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so if he manifests in the heart of Suta Goswami, he'll be able to transmit the message as it is. Okay, so there are many quotes which might not be able to cover. Shall go to the third verse. Okay, one more thing, yeah. So this one in Tattva Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami quotes from I think Brahmanda Puran or Brahma Puran, where he says that Shukdev Goswami, he was born and he left. Okay, he started walking. He was not concerned about family life, parents, mother, nothing. He started walking. But Vyasadeva, he wanted to teach him Srimad Bhagavatam. So he sent some of his disciples behind Shukdev Goswami, and they started reciting specific verses. What those verses are, we do not know, but they started reciting specific verses so that Shukdev Goswami gets attracted to the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he comes back and learns Srimad Bhagavatam from Vyasadeva. Okay, so this, even Shukdev Goswami will speak this, I think in the second canto, where he says Parinishitopi Nirgunyam, or maybe it's in the first canto itself. Parinishitopi Nirgunyam Uttama Shloka Leelaya Grahita Chetaha Rajarshe Akhyanam Yadititavan. So he was situated in Parinishitopi Nirgunyam. He was completely in transcendental position. Brahman realized. Parinishitopi Nirgunyam Uttama Shloka Leelaya. But when he heard the shlokas, Uttama Shloka describing the pastimes of Krishna, Uttama Shloka Leelaya Grahita Chetaha Rajarshe. He is attracted. Even though he was Brahman realized, he was completely attracted by those shlokas. Grahita Chetaha Rajarshe Akhyanam Yadititavan. And then he learned it from Vyasadeva. Okay. So third verse, again, it's a continuation of Suta Goswami's glorification of Shukdev Goswami. He says, Yasvanubhavam akhila shrutisāramekam adhyatma deepam atiti divirshatam tamondham samsarinam karunayah purana guhyam tam vyasa sunum upayame gurum muninam. Says, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who, out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated it by experience. So, this verse is basically, you see, so many activities of Shukdev Goswami has been glorified by Suta Goswami. So he says that he's Akhila. So here Prabhupada, he writes that in this prayer, Srila Suta Goswami practically summarizes the complete introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So how is that? So it's Svanubhavam. Svanubhavam is the glorification of Shukdev Goswami, that he personally assimilated or he personally realized the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Akhila Shruti Saram. Of all the Shrutis, all the Vedas, this is the essence. Akhila Shruti Saram Ekam Adhyatma Deepam. It is a transcendental light. And what does this light do? Transcendental Deepa, what does it do? Atiti Tirshatam Tamondham. For those who are desiring to get out of this darkness, Tamondham. What is the darkness? Samsarinam, this material world, that is the darkness. So those who desire to get out of this darkness, being compassionate on them, Karunayaha Purana Guhyam, he spoke this confidential Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. To that, Vyasa Sunam, the son of Srila Vyasadeva, Upayami Guru Muninam, I pay my obeisances, who is the Guru, or who is the spiritual master of all the sages. Okay. So this is, so Akhila Shruti Saramekam, this is Srimad Bhagavatam, which is personally experienced by Shukdev Goswami, and he spoke it out of mercy for to show the light for those who are engaged or who desire to get off this tamoantham, which is this material universe, material world. Srila Prabhupada writes that the Vedanta Sutras or the Brahma Sutras were compiled by Vyasadeva with a view to presenting just the cream of Vedic knowledge. So we'll discuss more about this when we come to the 4th chapter, and even 5th, 6th and 7th chapter we'll be discussing this. And Tamondam Samsarano, Prabhupada makes this elaborate discussion of how a karmi will never be happy, or he cannot be happy in this material world. One who's engaged in fruitive activities will never be happy. The materialistic world is called the darkest region of God's creation. Yet the unhappy materialist can get out of it simply by desiring to get out. But what does the karmi think? Although he is always harassed by his own material creations, he does not wish to escape. Such materialists are called karmis. And Prabhupada also gives the example of a camel. Camel who eats the thorny twigs, and he likes the taste of the twigs mixed with blood, but that blood is the camel's blood itself. But then he does not understand that, and he thinks it's very tasty. Even if he understands that it is blood, now the attachment to sense gratification is so much that there is some taste that comes out of it, and even though he knows that he's losing the energy of his body, the blood from his body, still the taste is so attractive. So karmis are like that. Okay. And Prabhupada also continues, and he speaks about the misuse of Vedanta Sutra, and he says that this Vedanta Sutra is directed to Gyanis, and Gyanis are those people who want to get out of this material world. Karmis are those who do not want to get out of this material world. Does not matter whether they understand their suffering or they are not suffering. Even if they understand they are suffering, they don't want to get out. Okay. Maybe because of lack of knowledge, or maybe because the attachment to sense gratification is so intense that they are not able to give it up. Okay. And there are karmis who basically are unaware that there is a way to get out of this. So they also don't want to get out. So in both ways, karmis are those people who don't want to get out of this material creation. They want to stay here. Okay. Either due to agyan or due to uncontrollable sense desires. Okay. Jnanis are those who want to get out of the material entanglement. Okay, so this Vedanta Sutra is basically directed to those Jnanis. And Vedanta Sutras are a compilation, or basically the essence from the Upanishads. And these Upanishads are considered the conclusive, or the actual message of the Vedas are condensed in the Upanishads, and Vedanta Sutra are basically the cream of this Upanishadic text, and is directed towards the Jnanis. But Vyasadeva, being the incarnation of the Supreme Lord, could foresee the misuse of Vedanta Sutra by unscrupulous men, and therefore he supplemented the Vedanta Sutra with the Bhagavata Purana. It is clearly said that this Bhagavatam is the original commentary on the Brahma Sutras. So this is mentioned in several Puranas, that Srimad Bhagavatam is the commentary on Brahma Sutra. More details are given in Tattva Sandarbha, but then we don't have the scope of looking into all this now. Specifically in Garuda Puran, it's mentioned Arthoyam Brahma Sutranam. This verse is also quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there it's explained that the Artha of Brahma Sutra is basically given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So, and by the mercy of Srila Shukdev, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Bhagavata Vedanta Sutra is available for all those sincere souls who want to get out of material existence. Okay. So we will see that Vedanta Sutra is meant for the Jnanis. Okay. But this Bhagavata Vedanta Sutra is meant for the devotees. Okay. It's the essence. Jnanis means just want to get out of the material world. But Bhagavatam is for those who want to do much more. Okay. Not only get out of this material world, but actually realize the absolute truth, actually render into, or actually enter into the highest spiritual realm. So Bhagavata Vedanta Sutra is for those people. And then he gives how Srimad Bhagavatam, comparing Srimad Bhagavatam along with the Mayavadis, between the Mayavadis, and he says that Shankaracharya intentionally did not touch Srimad Bhagavatam because it would be very difficult for him to surpass. Okay, so he wrote Sharirika Bhashya, and his followers they deprecated the Bhagavatam as some new presentation. So they say Bhagavatam was written by not Vyasadeva but Gopadev. Okay, so all that was, they say like that. But then beginning student should know that Srimad Bhagavatam is the only translated literature meant for those who are Paramahamsas and completely freed from the material disease called malice. The envious Mayavadi cannot have access to the Bhagavatam, but those who are really anxious to get out of this material existence may take shelter of this Bhagavatam because it is uttered by the liberated Srila Shukdev Goswami. So Srila Prabhupada here, he is basically making a point that even those, the Mayavadis who are very envious, they have no scope of ever coming out of this material existence. But those who are really anxious and who are not really contaminated by this Mayavadi philosophy, for them they should take shelter of Bhagavatam. Why? Because it is recited by Shukdev Goswami, who is the liberated personality. Okay. So because it's recited by someone who is already liberated, one who wants to get out of this material miseries must hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Yeah. So after praying to his spiritual master Shukdev in last two verses, after praying to this Brahma Shukdev in last two verses, Suta starts reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Several major Puranas and the Mahabharata start with the following verse. Right? Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Okay, so this verse is basically recited before reciting major Puranas and also Mahabharata. So from this point onwards, basically Suta Goswami starts reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. But he at this point he still did not say that I'm going to recite to you the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, that will come later. At this point of time, he just starts reciting, but he does not take the name that he is going to recite Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances onto the personality of Godhead. Narayana onto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, onto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and onto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Okay. Conquest means conquering. Conquering is Jaya. Jayam is conquering. In Hindi we say Jaya. This is the means of conquest. So what is the conquest here? Conquest is conquering conquering over the material nature and go to the spiritual world. Okay, that's the means of conquest. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. Okay. Actually, I wrote a verse. Anyways, so in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaks this Krishna Tulya Bhagavat. Krishna Tulya Bhagavat. You know this verse? You don't know the verse. Okay. So there, maybe you can see this verse. Okay, it's not here. Chalo. He says that Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna himself. Okay. Krishna Tulya Bhagavat. Sarva is prati shloke prati akshare nana artha kare. Okay, I don't remember the verse anyways. So there he says that Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna, and each and every letter of Srimad Bhagavatam can have millions and millions of meanings. Okay, so what we are seeing here is not absolute. Okay, we are not saying that this is the only way of looking at this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is one way based on how our acharyas have provided the comments, but there are so many other ways in which it can be looked into. Okay, so this is a means of conquest over this material nature. Okay, so before one recites the Srimad Bhagavatam, then one should offer obeisances to Narayana, Naranarayana Rishi, and Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning. Okay, now our acharyas do comment a lot on why, he's praying to the Supreme Lord Narayana, but why he's giving respect to Naranarayana Rishi, why he's giving respect to Mother Saraswati, and this is not mundane Saraswati, this is Shuddha Saraswati, Divya Saraswati, and Srila Vyasadeva. Okay, but as we said, no scope of it discussing. We'll concentrate on the verses, the flow, and Srila Prabhupada's purports. So Prabhupada writes that Jayam, okay, the Jayam basically means that uh, Jayam is conquering, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the very means of conquest also. So it's the activity, the Kriya, as well as it is the means by which you perform that Kriya, that activity. So it's both. Srimad Bhagavatam is both. And Prabhupada says, if one at all wants to conquer this perpetual struggle for existence, okay, so struggle for existence. He must re-establish his eternal relation with God. And one who wants to adopt such remedial measures must take shelter of literatures such as the Vedas and the Puranas. Okay. So one who wants to get out of this material existence must take shelter of the Vedic literatures. Without taking shelter of the Vedic literatures, it is not possible to mitigate the miseries of this material world. We have heard so many times, no? Like modern people, they try so much to mitigate the miseries of this material world, but without taking shelter of the injunctions of the Puranas, without following the rules, without following the regulations, without following the injunctions of the Shastra, it is not possible at all to ever mitigate this miseries of the material world. Does not matter how much scientific advancement people make, how many gadgets they prepare, whatever they do, no, it's not possible. Okay, so the only way is to take shelter of the Vedic literatures. And then Prabhupada gives an introduction to the Puranas, and he says that the Puranas are supplementary explanations of the Vedas intended for different types of men. And we know Puranas are divided into 3 categories based on the gunas: Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. Okay, so we have six Puranas for each of these categories. And all men are not equal. Okay, again, very revolutionary statement. All men are not equal because they are conditioned by different modes of material nature. Some of them are primarily in ignorance. Anyway, the modes always act in a mix. Okay, we cannot find a person who's totally in mode of ignorance, or a person totally in goodness, or a person totally in passion. It's prominently in which mode he is. So there's always a mixture. The mode are always mixed. So a person, we call a person is Tamoguna because prominently he's in Tamoguna, but there's a mixture of Sattva-guna, Rajoguna also. And then a person Rajoguna is prominently, he's influenced by Rajoguna, but he has a mix of Sattva and Tama as well. And Sattva-guna, a person who's on the Sattva-guna, he also have a little bit mixture of Raja and Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So based on these gunas, people are not equal. Okay. And Vedic literatures are basically meant to uplift human beings to pure devotional service. So because people are influenced by the gunas, there should be literatures, Vedic literatures, which are meant for people on different levels. And from that level, they can be brought up to the highest level. It's just like this, no? If people are on different floors of a building, okay, they should have different means. The lift or the elevator should go to the bottommost level also, if it has to uplift them. So there are Puranas, there are Vedic literatures which go to that level so that they can uplift people from the lowest level, from Tamoguna. Similarly from Rajoguna and similarly from Sattva-guna also. So Vedic literatures are basically meant for that. Some foolish people say that the Puranas have no connection with the Vedas, but it's not that. Even there are verses in Chandogya Upanishad and other Upanishads where they claim or they say that the Puranas are actually the Panchama Veda, part of Veda itself. They are the 5th Veda, and the Vedic literatures cannot be understood without the study of Puranas. All this study our Acharyas have done, Tattva Sandarbha especially, it's there. So Srila Sutta Goswami shows the way of chanting the Puranas. This may be followed by persons who aspire to be preachers of the Vedic literature and the Puranas. Srimad Bhagavatam is a spotless Purana, and it's especially meant for those who desire to get out of the material entanglement permanently. Okay, permanently. This is also very important. No? If you want to get out permanently, then Srimad Bhagavatam is the only way. Because other means, especially if the Gyanis, they also get out of the material world. If they are not offensive to the Lord, they get out of the material world, but they again have to come back. Right? We know this verse. If we reach Brahmajyoti, still they have to come back. But if we want to stay in the spiritual world permanently, which is our constitutional position, then Srimad Bhagavatam is the only way. It's not that apart from Srimad Bhagavatam, there's something else which will also elevate us to that permanent position. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only way, okay, because it's the essence of the essence. The essence is there in Vedanta Sutras. It's a commentary on the Vedanta Sutras, which basically bring out the topmost position, or basically reveals the constitutional position of the living entity, which is pure devotional service. So this is the only way. Okay. Yeah, so Sridhar Swami comments, which we have already seen. So from 5th verse onwards, okay. So 4th and in 5th verse, he expresses his satisfaction at the questions of the sage. You are able to see this, correct? Okay. Yeah. So from the 5th verse onwards, he expresses his satisfaction at the questions of the sages, and he says, "Munaya sadhu prishtoham bhavadbhirloka mangalam yatkritah krishna samprashno yenatma suprasidati." O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. Okay, so now it says no yenatma suprasidati, and it basically explains why in the first verse Sutta Goswami was very satisfied with these questions, because these questions deal with Krishna Samprashno. They are related to Krishna, and that satisfies the heart. Okay. I also mentioned that the 5th verse is indirectly an answer to the 11th question. The 11th question was, second question. In the 11th verse, it was the essence of all scriptures and that which satisfies the heart. So Jiva Goswami specifically says that even the questions of Krishna, inquiries about Krishna itself satisfies the heart. Okay, so it's not that something else is required. Even the inquiry about Krishna satisfies the heart. Okay, so he makes this point. I think I made a comment here. So in Krishna Sandarbha, quoting Sridhar Goswami, he says that a question concerning extracting the essence of all scriptures means talking about Krishna. And I have not given the reference here, but Jiva Goswami says so. Okay. And the sum and substance of all Vedic inquiries. So Srila Prabhupada says that the questions that pertain to Krishna are the sum and substance of all the Vedic inquiries. So that's why it satisfies the heart. Okay. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, this. He analyzes basically this prashna. Okay. And he says that the whole world is full of questions and answers. The birds are asking questions and answers. They're interested in that. The human being is interested in question and answer. The businessmen are interested in questions and answers. The lawyers, the students, the legislators, the politicians, the press representatives, everybody is interested only in different types of questions and answers which fulfills their purpose. Okay, so we are all purpose-driven beings. Right? Whatever activity we do, we have some purpose behind it. Okay, and to meet that purpose, we have to interact with people, and that interaction basically culminates in questioning and answering. Okay, so that completes or that leads a person to his purpose, whatever his purpose may be. It might be material or it might be spiritual. It's always based on questions and answers. But the questions which are related to Krishna, they are the only questions which can satisfy the heart. Okay. So all things but Krishna give temporary satisfaction only. So if we are to have complete satisfaction, we must take to the questions and answers about Krishna. Only these questions and answers will satisfy the heart, will satisfy the soul. Okay. There can be so many other purposes, but if the purpose is not in satisfying the soul, then all these questions and answers are just mundane. Okay, there are so many questions and answers. But the questions which are asked about Krishna, they are not mundane because they are related to Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it completely satisfies the heart. Okay, and Srila Prabhupada in his lecture, he says that Suta Goswami is especially happy with the question in first chapter, 23rd verse. Because now he will have the great opportunity to make the sages and Naimisharanya drink the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, the sixth question was that after Krishna went back to his abode, transcendental abode, where did Dharma take shelter? So, where did Dharma take shelter? It took shelter in Srimad Bhagavatam. So now he has the opportunity to speak about Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So from sixth verse onwards, now it speaks about
sixth question. This will answer sixth.
no.
Our relation.
This is not the answer to question sixth because it's not directly mentioning that Srimad Bhagavatam is where Dharma took shelter. Okay, that will come later. Okay, Krishna is Sadhamo Pagate Dharma Jnanadi Bisaha Kalo Nashtadrishamesha Purana Arko Dunodita. That's the answer. Okay, that will come at the end of third chapter. This is basically from the perspective of Suta Goswami. Okay, he is getting an opportunity to speak Srimad Bhagavatam. And that opportunity arose because of the question that is there in the 23rd verse of first chapter, which is, where did Dharma take shelter after Krishna left this world? So where did Dharma take shelter? Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so now he can explain Srimad Bhagavatam. So that satisfied his heart. So he's saying, Yenatma Suprasidhat. Even the questions about Krishna, they satisfy the heart. Okay. So from 6th verse onwards, the 6th and 7th verse is basically an answer to two questions. So if you want to take a break, you can take now. Oh, you have a question? Yes.
The fifth verse can be for this first question. You can put this.
Yes. Yeah. Because it says Lokamangalam. Okay. Because it says Lokamangalam, we can say that it is also speaking about it's answering the first question. But none of our acharyas have pointed this verse out as an answer to the first question. Okay, so that's why in this breakup also I have just mentioned that it indirectly we can say that it's answering that particular question. Okay, and actually Lokamangalam, it will answer the first question. The second question is essence of scriptures, which gives satisfaction to the heart. So we can say the fifth verse is basically it's addressing both the questions. It says Lokamangalam because it's related to Krishna, and because it's related to Krishna, therefore it's Yenatma Suprasidhati also. Okay, but our acharyas don't explain like this. So for our understanding, we can keep it that way. But from the presentation point of view, we can just accept how our acharyas present it. Okay, so yeah, in one way, yes. So these are only the questions which have been asked, but from an answer point of view, the answers which will be given, they will be the answers directly to the questions which have been asked. Okay. Yeah, so any other questions you have? No, so maybe we can take a break now. Okay, because from sixth verse onwards, we'll be getting into the details. We'll be answering two questions. So actually, from sixth verse onwards to 25, only two questions are answered. Okay, or not of 25 till 29. So from 6th verse onwards to 29th verse, only two questions will be answered. And anyways, we will see that. And 6th and 7th, we will be seeing in a bit detail, not in lots of detail, some detail, because these two verses are very, very important. Okay, and Srila Prabhupada has spoken a lot. There are almost around 48 lectures which he gave on the 6th verse itself. So this will not be able to discuss much of them, but this is important. The point is that 6th and 7th verse are very important because the two answers which are being given in this chapter till this point are there. The essence of that is there in the 6th and 7th verse, which is then elaborated in the other verses from 8th verse onwards till 29th verse. But the essence is there in 6th and 7th verse, so we can see that So 6th and 7th verse is the answer to the first and second question. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktiradhokshaje ahaitukya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Okay, so that the first question was that which is the what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. The ultimate good is devotional service. Okay, devotional service unto him. Bhaktir adhokshaje. Okay, savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje. So devotional service to the Lord is the highest welfare activity. Okay, and it should be costless, ahituki, and apratihata. It should be unbroken. Means there is no cessation. There is no. It should not be broken. It should be continuous, and that kind of activity will satisfy the self. Yayatma suprasidati. The second question was the essence of all scriptures, which is again devotional service onto Krishna, and this essence of all scriptures satisfies the heart. Yayatma suprasidati. So this 6th verse is basically an answer to both the first question as well as the second question, because the essence of all scriptures cannot go against the welfare of all people, right? The welfare and ultimate good for all people should be the essence of all scriptures, or else the scriptures itself becomes meaningless. Correct? If it's not good for people, then what's the use of the essence of the scriptures? So these two should be together. So therefore, the answer to these two questions should also be only one single answer, because devotional service unto the Lord is the highest welfare activity, is the highest good for people, and it is also that which is the essence of all scriptures, and it also satisfies the heart. So all three conditions are met only by devotional service. Okay, so these three things should be together. You cannot have welfare of people, okay, which is not the essence of scripture and which is not devotional service. If the essence of scripture is something which is not welfare for the people, then it is contradictory. And if the essence of scripture is not bhakti, that is also contradictory. And if bhakti is not the welfare of all good people, that is contradictory. And if bhakti is not the essence of all scripture, that is also not proper. So all these three should be in the same line. They are all in the same plane. So the answer to the first question or second question, both these questions should be this verse and the next verse. The next verse says that Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayat Yasu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahitukam. Okay, so these two verses talk about Bhakti Yoga, okay, about devotional service onto Vasudeva, who is Bhagavati, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, and when such devotional service is rendered, then Vairagya and Jnana, they automatically arise within the heart, okay, without any specific endeavor to attain Jnana or to attain Vairagya. Okay, so now here if you see Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo, in the second verse of the first chapter, all cheating religion was rejected. Correct? Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo dharma saranam sadam. So from this verse onwards, what is factual dharma, what is actual dharma is being defined. Okay, so if you see the breakup from 6th verse onwards till the 29th verse, okay, it's speaking about the proper dharma. Okay, cheating religion has been rejected. Okay, then what else? What else is there? What kind of dharma should we follow? That is explained from this verse onwards till 29th verse. Okay, so dharma means this. In Vedic literatures, dharma basically relates to Varnashrama dharma. Okay, we see the Shrutis also. We have this Upasana Kanda and we have this Karma Kanda. And even in the Puranas, if you see, there are lots and lots of regulations and rules which are mentioned based on the Varnas. Okay, So Vedic literatures, when we speak about dharma, it basically your varnashrama dharma. And here Sutta Goswami in these verses will specifically kind of marry this dharma, varnashrama dharma, with the topmost essence of scriptures, which is devotional service. So now we can, in one way, we can say that this second chapter is basically the essence or basically the summary of the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, because Bhagavatam propounds devotional service onto the Supreme Lord. Okay, the Abhideya process is more prominent. And these verses from 6th to 29th, they bring that out completely. Okay, so in context to the Varnashrama principles which are mentioned in other Vedic literatures and the highest essence of Vedic literature, which is devotional service, both are kind of brought in together to bring out the ultimate conclusion that does not matter what, or not it does not matter what you do, but whatever Varnashrama principles or activities you follow, they're basically meant for rendering devotional service onto the Lord. So we will see those verses. This 6th and 7th verse is basically defining it's basically an essence which says that the Paro Dharma, the topmost Dharma, is only devotional service onto Adhokshada, and it should be causeless and it should be without any cessation. Okay, so this bhakti should not be motivated. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes about two things: Pravritti Marga and Nivritti Marga. Okay, Pravritti Marga is gradual progress through sense gratification. Okay, following the Vedic literatures. Okay, so just to put in context, people outside who are engaged in sense gratification, they are not Pravritti Margas. They are not the followers of Pravritti Margas, because Pravritti Marga is a authorized system in Vedic literatures. Okay, what they are doing is only sinful activities. It's not Pravritti Marga. Okay, Pravritti Marga and Nivritti Marga both are supposed to take the person to transcendence. But Srila Prabhupada in his purport rejects this Pravritti Marga, and he says because it's a path of sense enjoyment which is inferior, therefore Pravritti Marga is basically useless. Okay, and Nivritti Marga, or the path of renunciation, is the higher path, because the material existence of the living being is a diseased condition of actual life. And material existence is temporary, illusory, full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. There is just the futile attempt to get rid of the miseries. And temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness. So it does not matter whether you are following just like animals, you are doing sense gratification, still it's miserable. And even if you are following this Pravritti Marga, one thing is it's very slow. Another thing is there's lots of way of getting deviated, and it's the path of sense enjoyment. Okay, so even if it's so anything that is related, or that is on the level, or which is which requires interaction with this material nature, is basically miserable. Okay, so Pravritti Marga is not proper, and then he leads that to mixed devotional service, and he says that ahituki basically means that the devotional service should not be rendered because of. Is it not visible here? What happened?
Power off.
Power off. Okay. So ahituki, there should not be any hetu, or there should not be any cause for a devotional service. If you are doing devotional service for some material benefits, then that's not parodharma. Okay, this verse is defining parodharma, that transcendental dharma which should have no cause. The parodharma is bhakti, but this bhakti should not have any cause. You should not be doing it for the purpose of gaining some material benefit. Okay. So this mixed devotional service is actually an obstruction. It is not parodharma. So renunciation or abnegation for ultimate good is certainly better occupation than enjoyment in the diseased condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. So if a person engages in devotional service but is attracted to sense gratification, then it only lead to misery. This yenatma suprasiddhiti will not happen. Okay, because ahituki apratihata, only that will lead to what? Yayatma suprasiddhati, correct? Only that will lead to yayatma suprasiddhati. But if it is with hetu, and if it is not apratihata, if it is broken, in between you do devotion for some time, then you leave it. You are also engaged in sense gratification, devotion service, sense gratification, devotion service, sense gratification. It will not satisfy the self. It should be both. It should be costless. You should not have a cost for performing devotion service. At the same time, it should be unceasing. Unceasing. It should be uninterrupted. Okay, that's the proper word. It should be uninterrupted. If it's interrupted devotion service, one cannot have full satisfaction of the heart. It will not happen. Okay, so there are so many things in this verse actually. So parodharma is that which is devotion service unto the Lord. It should be costless. Okay, you should not be attracted to, you should not render devotion service of material attachment. Apratihata, it should be uninterrupted. Okay, even if it's interrupted or if it is costful, there is some cost behind rendering devotion service, then this will not happen. Heart will not get satisfied. Okay, so dharma, Srila Prabhupada explains dharma as that which sustains one's existence. And a living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities with his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Okay. And Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. And this relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. So dharma is basically means servant and served. This is parodharma. Devotional service means what? Meaning we are doing service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? That is devotional service. So the parodharma is basically the relationship between the one who is serving and the one who is being served. That's all. Okay. And that relationship should be unaffected by any cause. It should be uninterrupted, and that relationship will satisfy the self. If it is with cause and if it's interrupted, it will not satisfy the self. No, actually, I have heard many devotees, they say, chanting. Guru Maharaj also mentions in many of his lectures, he says, people, they chant 30, 40, 50 years, but then transformation of the heart does not happen. That's because these two are problematic. Either it's done with some cause because of lack of knowledge, or it's interrupted. Coming out of this bad samskaras becomes a big problem for them. Both things are there. Okay. Yeah. So this also answers the cause. Okay, anyway, I will not get into this because it will take lots of time. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojatha Janatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chaya Dahitukam. And dharma is also supposed to lead one to vairagya and jnana. Okay. Dharma is supposed to lead one towards detachment. And that is why Pravritti Marg is, even though it's authorized, but it's rejected by Srimad Bhagavatam. Because to lead to vairagya, it's very difficult in Pravritti Marga. And Nivritti Marga, where it's the path of renunciation, leads to vairagya. Okay. This verse basically says that Bhakti Yoga itself leads the people to Vairagya and Jnana. Okay, and because this Bhakti Yoga is the Parodharma, so therefore Dharma is supposed to lead a person to Jnana and Vairagya. So if we speak specifically about Vairagya, in Vedic literatures, when we speak about Dharma, it is your Dharma, Artha, Kama. These three are very prominent. And Moksha is discussed in the Upanishads. But normally, for people who are in the Varnashrama institution, Upanishads are basically used, or basically, I'll not say used, but they are basically meant for the sannyasis, you can say. Okay. For the other Varna ashramas, it's basically the other scriptures. Okay. Not the Upanishads, but the others, Brahmanas, Aranikas, and Samhitas, like this. And there, it's prominently Dharma, Artha, and Kama. Okay. Now, the Dharma that we are speaking with respect to the Vedic literatures is not this Parodharma. Dharma basically means your religious duties that people perform. Okay. But this does not lead to Vairagya. So therefore, such kind of Dharma is rejected in Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma Projita Kaitavatra. Because they are cheating religion. Because Dharma is supposed to lead you. Dharma, which is non-different from devotional service, is supposed to lead a person to transcendental knowledge and Vairagya and renunciation from everything that is material. But the Dharma or so-called dharma which is mentioned in other Vedic literatures, they don't lead a person to Vairagya. Gradually, yes, it is supposed to lead, but there are many pitfalls on the way. And Srimad Bhagavatam is therefore a transcendental literature because in the garb or in the level of being in the Puranas, it takes a person to the highest level. Okay. So, Prabhupada writes that there are foolish people who regard bhakti as something which is only for the sentimental people or for the less intelligent people. Okay. So he says, according to them, bhakti or devotional service of the Lord is meant for those who cannot perform the high grade activities. Generally, it is said that bhakti cult is meant for the Shudras, Vaishyas, and the less intelligent women class. But that is not the actual fact. This is a general opinion of people that bhakti is very easy to perform. So therefore, it is for those people who are very simple-minded, who are not trained in Vedic literatures. If something is very bombastic, then it looks very. If something is very grand, then it's given more value. But if something is very simple, normally in this material world, that is not given much value. Okay. So when we speak about Upanishads, about Vedanta Sutras, about Jnanis, speculating so much in their mind, then it looks very grand. It looks very amazing. But bhakti, chant Krishna's name, one simple Mahamantra, you chant, and then you can go back to God at the highest level. So people think, okay, what is this? It's not very grand. So then it's all for less people. What? Vedanta Sutra, so many Upanishads are there, so many verses are given there, so much Vedanga, so many Vedangas, Jyotish we have to study, grammar we have to study, Nirukti is there, Vyakarana is there, so much is there. And then when someone comes and says, chant Hare Krishna, and that's it. People think, okay, what is this? We're for simple people. And it will not lead to the highest goal also. So it's not a fact. Bhakti is the highest dharma. And this is propagated in none other than Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the essence or which is the commentary on whatever these people considered as the topmost, the Vedanta Sutra. So Vedanta Sutra, you have very high esteem for the Vedanta Sutras, which is in turn and the cream of Upanishads, which also you hold in very high esteem. And Bhagavatam is the commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And what you get is Bhagavatam speaks about Parodharma, which is devotional service. So this proves that devotional service is not something which they think or which they think that it is very simple. Devotional service is the topmost position of, or it's the topmost essence of all Vedic literatures, and it reveals the constitutional position of the living entity. It's the activity of the constitution. It's the activity of the living entity, the constitutional activity of the living entity, and also reveals the soul's true position in relation to the Supreme Lord. Okay. Therefore, bhakti is the sublime and easiest process for everyone. Okay. And all the other high-grade activities designated as sacrifice, charity, austerity, etc. are all corollary factors following the pure and scientific bhakti cult. Corollary means supplementary. Okay. They follow the devotional service. Because in Shastra, these three things should never be rejected, right? Bhagavad Gita shloka says that you should never yajna jnana tapa. Yajna dana tapa. You should not give up. Right? Krishna says. And this is a message of all the Vedic literatures also. But these are all supplementary factors to devotional service. Okay. And when one renders devotional service, then the result of such perfect knowledge, or he gets knowledge. Okay. And that knowledge, with that knowledge, one becomes detached from material affection. Okay, yeah, then he speaks about this negating the non-essentials and realizing the positive form. So negation does not mean negation of the positive. Negation of the non-essentials does not mean negation of the essential. This is basically directed towards the Mayavadis or the Jnanis who do this neti process. Negate all this material. Negate. But then in that process, they also negate the transcendental form of the Lord. Negate Krishna also. So negation does not mean negation of the positive, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual essence. Negation of the non-essentials does not mean negation of the essential as well. Basically the same point. Okay, so this is factual vairagya. Vairagya does not mean that you get renounced from the spiritual activities also. The bhakti cult, being the supermost occupation of the living being, leads him out of material sense enjoyment. That is a sign of a pure devotee. This is not possible by dry reasoning. It happens by the grace of the Almighty. This is an important point, that devotional service, now if there is the involvement of intellect in jnana, where people say, okay, I do something, I distinguish between what is right, what is wrong, what is sat and what is asat. Okay. And if I do that with my endeavor, I can negate all the material, and then I can bring myself to the spiritual. So some activities being happening, I can see something is happening, I am doing something and there is some result. But devotional service, okay, it automatically brings jnana, and automatically jnana means transcendental knowledge, and it also leads to detachment. How that happens cannot be understood by dry reasoning. Okay, just by performing devotional service, how the lower tastes go away, how this material affection goes away, it cannot be understood by dry reasoning. Okay, but it actually happens by the grace of the Lord, because we are rendering devotional service. Krishna helps. Krishna acts. This, what's that verse in 10th chapter? Tesham satadayuktanam bhajatam priti purakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mama piyanti te. So he gives the transcendental knowledge, dadami buddhi yogam tam, when one is engaged in his pure devotional service. Okay, so therefore, all good qualities like knowledge, detachment, etc., automatically comes who follows the principles of bhakti cult. So therefore, devotional service is the supermost occupation of the human being. So 6 and 7, we discussed about unalloyed devotional service. Okay, that is good for everyone. It's the essence of all scriptures, and it's satisfying to the heart. Yeah?
How the 7th verse is answering
How the 7th verse is answering?
there is both question.
Okay. See, one is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha. So this Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate good for all people. Correct? It's the essence of all scriptures. It's the essence of all scriptures. Okay. And in that way, it is answering. So this is answering the first and second question. This is Yenatma Suprasidati. It can be indirectly derived because once one attains transcendental knowledge and he gets detached from the material affection, then automatically the heart becomes satisfied. Okay. So from the second question's point of view, we can just say that it's the essence of all scripture is mentioned in the 7th verse. Okay. And this Yayatma Suprasidati, it basically relates to the 6th question. The 6th verse. Savepum Samparo Dharma Yato Bhakti Radokshade Ahitukya Pratirtha Yayatma Suprasidati. So Suta Goswami is basically answering these two questions in these two verses. Okay. So the three aspects which we discussed now, ultimate welfare, essence of all scriptures, and satisfaction of the heart. So these two are kind of shared between these two verses, 6th and 7th verse. So with respect to your test, if the questions are which question is being answered in which verse, you can say 6th and 7th answer both question 1 and question 2. Right. Okay. Fine. From 8 to 13, Dharma and its purpose. We discussed, right? Dharma and its connection with devotional service is being explained. So that is happening from the 8th to 13th verse. Okay. Yeah. So in the 8th verse, Dharma svanushtitah pumsam vishvaksena kathasuyah notpadet yadiratim shrama evahi kevalam. The dharma or dharma svanushtitaha means prescribed duties. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So this verse very clearly puts into perspective that dharma, if it does not lead to devotion service or attraction for the topics of the Lord, it is basically useless. Okay, so this substantiates the second verse in the first chapter. See, this when we are speaking about dharma in this chapter, no, it'll go back. You can think of it in that way. So the second verse speaks about dharma and the topmost dharma projita kaitavatra. Okay. So now this second chapter is talking only about dharma. So we have to see it in context. I'm not saying that you have to relate it to that second verse. I'm just saying that you have to see it in the context of the second verse of what actually is being rejected there. Okay, and what dharma, the definition of dharma, what is being given, and what it is supposed to lead one to. Okay, it's just a question of perspective of how you see it. Right, you're able to understand?
So means it's here other dharmas are saying means other dharmas which is not leading to
But even
When we say other dharma, we are speaking about prescribed duties. Okay. Dharma basically means varnashrama activities, varnashrama duties. For each of the varnas and each of the ashramas, there are prescribed duties. You can understand, you know what is prescribed duties, correct? So for Brahmanas, no, he has this duties that he has to perform. Kshatriyas has a set of duties that he has to do. Vaishyas, they have to, Shudras, they have their duties. And based on the ashrama also, there are common duties among the different varnas. And there are other duties also that they have to perform. Okay, so they are prescribed duties. And prescribed duties, if you see the 3rd, 4th, 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna stresses to Arjuna that he has to perform his prescribed duties. Because that elevates one to transcendental knowledge. And from that, one can become detached from this material affection, from this material this thing, and then he speaks about this yoga and bhakti. Okay, so prescribed duties are actually meant to lead one person to pure devotion service. Okay, so varnashrama activities are basically meant for rendering devotion service. There are many verses, even the verses will come here. Okay, in the 13th verse itself is that Ata Pumbir Tuja Shrestha Varnashrama Vyavhavisha Svanushthitasya Dharmasya Samsiddher Haritoshanam. Hari should be pleased by your varnashrama activities. And those varnashrama activities, okay, the occupational activities which a man performs, if he is not leading him to attraction, to leading him to attraction towards the message of the Supreme Lord, na utpadayet. If it does not arise, if it does not lead to the arise, or it does not lead, utpadayet ratim for what? Vishwaksena kathasu. If it does not lead to the katha of the Supreme Lord, then it is shrama evahi kevalam. It is of no use, literally. People might think that I'll perform my prescribed duties for artha and kama, but dharma should not be performed for artha and kama. And if it is performed only for artha and kama, then it is actually useless. Sorry?
and that is Kaitava Dharma.
It's Kaitava Dharma, yes. Actually, even for moksha, that's Kaitava Dharma, according to Bhagavatam. Only pure devotional service is your proper dharma. Dharma, artha, kama. Dharma, engaging in religious activities for artha, kama, and ultimately, desiring to have moksha. All this are Kaitava Dharmas. They are cheating religion. Because what moksha? Without devotional service, what is there in moksha? There's nothing there. And anyway, even if you get moksha, go to the Brahma Jyoti, you have to come back again. So it's useless. It's cheating in that way.
But when we see here, occupational duties, even if we take as a devotional service, devotional duties, sometimes we see the devotees, those are neophyte stage or those are practicing devotional service, does not have an attraction for chanting or for hearing. So even that is Shramaya Kevalam, whatever.
No, that's not Shramaya Kevalam. That is the neophyte stage. We will see in this chapter itself. Okay. So any devotional service performed, it might be with offenses. Okay. But still, the goal is that we continue doing this. because anyone who takes up devotional service, or at least in my case, okay, we did not have no attraction. Anyone who takes up devotional service, we cannot say he just on the same day itself he becomes a Mahabhagat who has taste for the Supreme Lord or taste for doing devotional service. It's a process. So therefore, there are stages. There's a neophyte stage, this is Madhyama stage, this is Uttama stage. Okay.
Because sometimes Prabhupada used to do, if you chant with offenses, even if you chant for 300 years, you will not attain.
That is there, but that's because it is based on the desire that you have. Okay. Now, if your desire is to render pure devotional service, and you're chanting with that desire, but because of your previous samskaras, your mind goes here and there. You're not attentive to your chanting, okay, but you have this desire to chant nicely, to do pure devotional service. Over a period of time, these offenses will gradually go away, okay, and you will come to a position where you are able to chant or you are able to render devotional service properly, okay. But if a person does not have the desire to render pure devotional service or to even chant with attentiveness, he's just mouthing those words, just chanting, but does not have the desire to render devotional service, for him, nothing will happen. No? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, what is that verse? Right? Bahu janma kari yadi shravan kirtan prabhu tana paye krishna pade prematan. Bahu janma kari, millions of lifetimes, even if you do devotional, it's actually not devotional service because your heart is not inclined towards devotional service. You are uttering mantras, but then your consciousness is not in that. So that does not lead to pure devotional service. That's just, that is Shrama Eva hi Kevalam. Just performing the same thing again and again. It's just repetition of a parrot. Prabhupada also says, it's like repetition of a parrot. Parrot repeats, but it's just repeating. There's no desire within the heart. See, if you get into this now, you'll get deviated. So maybe we can discuss it later. Okay. But the desire should be there. Okay. If the desire is there, but because of our previous samskaras, we are not able to perform, then over a period of time, as we render devotional service, because the desire is there to do devotional service, it is hoped that you will continue doing devotional service, and that itself will act as a purification process. And then one will attain the stage. We will see from the 16th to 21st verse, these stages are there, Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha. We'll see at that time how it goes. Anyways, we are running out of time and we have not covered much, so maybe we can go a bit fast. So dharma, which does not produce attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead, is Shrama Eva hi Kevalam. So in context to the actual dharma, your prescribed duties are supposed to lead you to devotional service. And Prabhupada speaks about bodily conception of life, then speaks about the mental conception of life. Okay, bodily conception is concentrated selfishness when you are doing only things for yourself. Then there's extended selfishness, which is manifested by doing things for your family, for society, community, nation, things like that. And then there's this mental conception, where you are engaged, or a person is engaged in poetry, philosophy, propagating some of the isms, communism, socialism, and things like that, which are limited only to the body and the mind. And all these activities will lead only to dissatisfaction, because these people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind. So therefore, they are not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. So one thing is, it's Shrama Eva hi Kevalam. Okay. And it is not Yayatma Suprasidhati also. It does not lead to any satisfaction of the heart. So these occupational duties became completely mundane. Even though Varnashrama activities are supposed to lead you to devotional service, but still these prescribed duties just remain mundane if it is done only for Artha and Kama, or done only for Moksha. Like this. Okay. So therefore, there is a need to satisfy the spirit, because he is the potent active principle of the body and mind. And without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy simply with emolument of the body and mind. Emolument means just by bribing the body and mind. You keep on giving something to the body and mind, but it will not satisfy. But if you give something to the soul, then only you can be happy. So the need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. So that is the spiritual conception of life, where we have to engage ourselves in the occupational engagements that will evoke our divine consciousness. This is possible only by hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord, and any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead is said herein to be simply a waste of time. Okay. This is because other occupational duties, whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation to the soul. So this is the actual factual understanding that any occupational activity, okay, which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead. Okay, so when we say, Vishwaksena Kathasuya, this Vishwaksena Kathasuya is this, hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead. And if your occupational activity does not help to achieve that attachment, then it is Shrama Evahi Kevalam, because it cannot give liberation to the soul. We struggle because we are not liberated. One who is liberated, he may be in the material world or in the spiritual world, he does not struggle for existence. He is beyond the dualities and he is not affected by happiness, distress, heat, cold, like this. He is beyond the dualities. So one who is liberated, he is beyond the dualities. Yes.
Yes, if that occupational engagement is not invoking the interest in hearing and chanting for Krishna, so what we have to do? We have to leave it as the occupational duties. Because in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that sahajam sadosham apnaptyade.
Even if there are faults, then also you should not give up.
And give up your prescribed duties. How to understand?
Yeah. Prescribed duties are meant to elevate one to spiritual consciousness. Okay. Yeah, I have to see the context in which that verse comes in Bhagavad Gita. But just directly answering to your question, if occupational engagements do not give rise to the hearing and chanting of the transcendental pastimes of God, should we give up those engagements? It depends on what kind of engagement it is. Sinful activities obviously should be given up. Okay. It's actually a very broad question. See, if a person is engaged in his varnashrama activities, he should not give it up. Okay. If it's a Brahmana, if it's a Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, they should not give up their prescribed duties. Because if they give up their prescribed duties, they'll end up becoming sinful. If a Brahmana does not do his prescribed duties, basically means he's doing sinful activities, because no living entity can stop activities. So either he has to do his prescribed duties or either he has to do sinful activities. Okay. So if it's not leading him to the actual this thing, then Shramayevahi Kevalam, like millions and millions of lifetimes he'll be performing his prescribed duties, but then it's a useless waste of time. Because he has done some pious activities, he might be in a better position in his next life. Okay. And prescribed duties are such that we end up doing some devotional service anyways. Okay. A Brahmana or a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, doing charity, all those things, they end up doing some kind of service.
So why it is said that occupational engagements which are not invoking Krishna friends, so why it say that this we said like that the prescribed duties are anyway, it means some
service is there, but it does not provoke attraction for the Lord. The main word here is attraction. Okay. So one might do something, okay, just as a prescribed duty. So that, I'm doing it so that, I can enjoy in future. Okay, I can enjoy in future, or I can be happy in this life. Vaishyas give charity. For what? Not to gain attraction for the Supreme Lord's message, but the desire is so that more business happens. They can gain more money, they can earn more, their family will be prosperous. So if we have this Anya Abhilasha, other Abhilashas is there, it basically means that you do not have this prescribed duties, even though you have performed, these prescribed duties have been performed only for fulfilling your abhilam, your own desires. So therefore, it's Shama Eva Hi Kevalam. Okay. And they have not provoked attraction for the message of personality of God. They get results by doing this prescribed duties because even though they don't have an attraction for the message of the Lord, but still, prescribed duties given in the Vedas, they have somehow aligned themselves with the injunctions of the Vedas which have been given by the Supreme Lord. So they get some results. They get pious results. But if they get pious result, or whether they get pious result, whether they get sinful result, it's useless. Because it will keep them in the material world. Right? So they might get into pious results by doing the Varnashrama activities. But if it is going to keep them in this material world, and they are going to go this Punarapi Jaranam Puranam, the same cycle is going to happen. Shama Eva Hi Kevalam. What's the point of doing a devotional service? This will come in, we will not have time, but I think in the next, maybe the next verse, or which verse it is?
We can leave that occupational duties and can engage in devotional service.
Can we leave our occupational duties and engage in devotional service? Yes. Yes, but if the heart or if the consciousness is not completely pure, then there's a chance of falling down from devotional service.
That means we have to modify our occupational duties like that so that it can...
We don't modify our occupational duties. Okay. I can say we can modify our occupational duties. See, this we don't do from our own accord. Okay, the spiritual master decides this. Occupational duties, we situate ourselves in one of the varnas, in one of the ashramas. Okay. This is like a safety net, as Prabhupada said. Devotional service, we are all conditioned beings. So we have been in this material world for how many trillions of lifetimes. So we have our own set of samskaras. To take up pure devotional service and then not fall down from that, it requires a very strong determination. It requires the willingness or the desire to render pure devotional service. And it might not be the case with many people who may have other desires also, who are not able to overcome those other desires, even though they understand that pure devotional service is the topmost work to be done. So for them, they situate themselves in one of these varnashrama positions because it's a safety net. If you are doing your prescribed duties, now there is some tinge of sense gratification is kind of allowed also. Prabhupada says, Grihastha ashram. You have a wife, some sense gratification is allowed. So that is there. But if say no Grihastha ashram, no pure brahmachari, pure devotional service, and then he is not able to control himself, then he falls down. So now if varnashrama system is there, this ashram system, Grihastha ashram is there, then there is no question of falling down because he has those inclinations, so he can engage those inclinations. At the same time, he can also elevate himself in Krishna consciousness. So it's like a safety net. So occupation, one must situate himself in one of the varnas and ashramas, and that acts as a impetus to progress in devotional service because he will not have a gross fall down. But we have seen, you know the history, even within ISKCON itself, so many things have happened. And that's because this institution of varna and ashrama, that safety net, as Prabhupada called, was not there. It was not instituted that time. So now we want to do that so that even if there is some lapse, still it's we are not totally fallen.
Means we have to perform these activities in such a way that it will...
All your activities in your whole life, each and every moment should be only with the goal of rendering devotional service. You will see, all these verses, all these questions are answered in the subsequent verses. So
regarding this question,
maybe I think we can stop now, right? So we have done till 8th verse, correct? Because this 5 minutes more, it's 11:55 already. I can take questions. We have to finish at 12. So from 9th onwards, we can continue tomorrow, and we have lots to cover. So we'll probably do it a bit faster. Maybe not go through the purports in detail, and we can do it a bit faster because I want to. My idea is that because you have already read the second chapter, you will have some questions. So I want to give more time for questions than just me speaking and going through those verses. So in the next session, we will try to finish this chapter a bit faster, and then if you have or whatever questions you have, we can discuss that. So from your side, if you can read, I can give you this breakup to you. Okay, this chapter breakup. So what I would suggest is, before next class, you can go through this breakup. You can read the verses and translation purports in quite detail, and have your questions ready. Okay, so that now we can spend more time in questions. And more time is what, around 20-30 minutes like this. Because see, most of these things which we are discussing here, I am expecting that you would already know. Having gone through this whole Bhakti Shastra course, detachment from this material activity, those, I don't really have to stress on those points. So we can discuss on those things which are unclear, or which Prabhupada makes a very significant point to understand the flow of this chapter and the verses. So I would expect that. So we can do that. So next class maybe we can do a bit faster and go through these verses, not concentrating much on the purports, and then we can have questions like this. Okay, so yes, questions. You were asking something.
Actually, I was regarding this question. He was telling this, quoting this verse of Sadosham Upinatejit.
Yeah.
That verse of Bhagavad Gita. Actually, in that purport, Prabhupada very nicely explains that even he gives in Bhagavad Gita only that example is given that the fire is covered by smoke, then also fire is not impure. Doesn't become impure. So every endeavor is actually contaminated.
Everyone is contaminated.
You will have some fault.
Yes.
But then at last,
in the material world, every activity is contaminated.
Means every endeavor is covered by some fault like this.
Which verse is that?
This is
18th chapter.
1848. Okay, this one. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, even if such work is full of fault. Okay.
That later Prabhupada explains that the other one should be
determined to serve the Supreme Lord by his occupation in Krishna consciousness. This is the perfectional point.
And then when a particular type of occupation is performed with the satisfaction of all the defects in the
but if these are sinful activities, you should definitely give it up. Okay. But if it is your occupational duties, then you should not give it up.
Yeah, he explains that how Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra.
So means
all
all
activities are
occupational duties we have to perform in such a way that it will attract us to devotion service to Krishna.
Attract us is the initial starting point. Okay. But from our point of view, or from all of us point of view, we perform Varnashrama activities only for rendering devotional service. Okay. So that's the idea. And it should invoke attraction for. It should increase. As we go over a period of time, we perform our prescribed duties. It should lead one to attachment. All the different stages are in devotional service. It should elevate ourselves. It should be like that. See, and as Krishna says here, it's not possible to perform all occupational duties without any fault. Okay. Even Brahminical occupation, Kshatriyas, we don't know whether they even exist or not, but Vaishyas and Shudras, even if their occupations also, there will be fault. We cannot do it as strictly as it's mentioned in the scriptures. It's Kali Yuga, after all. In Kali Yuga, its performance of occupational duties is also not possible. So whatever we can do, we should be able to do that, and we will be helped by the activities of devotional service. Okay. It's actually devotional service which sustains everything. It's not that, here these verses might give an idea that occupational duty should be performed to render devotional service. But actually it's the other way around. Okay, especially in Kali Yuga, it's the other way around, that devotional service is performed, so that we can sustain ourselves in our occupational duties also. Okay, because our inclination in Kali Yuga is all towards sinful activities. The environment is like that. Okay, by devotional service we protect ourselves, and by rendering such kind of devotional service we will be able to perform these occupational duties also, which will act as a safety net if we fall down from devotional service. So these two are complementary, but the most important aspect is devotional service. These verses might give an idea that Varnashrama or these things are the one which is sustaining devotional service, but no, these are not sustaining devotional service. Devotional service is the root. and everything else is a corollary factor. No, they are all supplementary factors. They help in devotional service. But as said, devotional service, bhakti is independent. Actually, in these verses, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives a completely different interpretation to the 6th verse. And he says that when bhakti is told to be causeless, it basically means that bhakti is independent. Bhakti arises on its own. But when Prabhupada interprets, he says bhakti should be performed without any cause or without any motivation. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says bhakti is causeless. Bhakti arrives on its own. And then he completes some complete different explanation he gives. Anyways, for your Bhakti Vaibhav, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is out of scope. So we will not be discussing that. But I am saying that devotional service is independent. Devotional service is not dependent on varnashrama duties, occupational duties like that. Our sustenance in Krishna consciousness, this is our devotional service. Everything else that is there, it's all being helped by our devotional activities. So without chanting, without kirtans, we will not be able to do our occupational duties also properly. It's not possible, without Mangalarti. So all our devotional activities, without that, we will not be able to even sustain ourselves in any kind of occupational engagements. Bhakti is what works in Kali Yuga. Everything else is full of faults. Okay. Occupational engagements, Krishna says, is full of fault. Okay, no matter. So in Kali Yuga, anyway, it is full of, every activity is full of faults in Kali Yuga. But devotional service, if you do, then it can take you to the topmost position. So devotional service can be pure. But everything else in Kali Yuga will always have some tinge of impurity. It basically says that devotional service, bhakti is the only thing which can elevate one. Other things cannot. Okay, so now it's 12:03. So we'll stop. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.